Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's online worship. I'm Diane Oberbeck, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I serve as a member of the Board of Trustees. We are a freely gathered, open, welcoming community supported by your contributions, which can be made with the donate button on our website. By going to our Breeze program if you are a member, or by mailing your check to 524 Allen Avenue, Portland, Maine. Please note if the donation is your pledge or a gift to our Share the Plate. The Share the Plate recipient for January is Portland Area Villages, whose mission is to provide support and empower seniors who wish to remain living in their homes as long as possible. Volunteers provide services, social connection, and activities for members. You are invited to join us today, January 17th at 10:45 for our congregational conversation and coffee hour. Also today, there's a wonderful workshop online at 1 o'clock, Callings During Challenging Times. Our coffee hour Zoom link and the registration link for the workshop can be found on our website. To learn more about Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church, please go to our website at a2u2.org.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Donna Dahlham, minister of this beloved community, Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church in Portland, Maine. I'm pleased and excited to welcome author and workshop presenter Gregg Levoy to our pulpit this morning and our afternoon workshop space. Thank you, Gregg, for being with us today and throughout the day. Our call to worship words are those of the Reverend Ashley Horan, written for UU the Vote. Another world is possible. Another world is possible. We say it again and again, even when the proof lies somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond our reach, beyond our imagination. This is our faith. Another world is possible. There are many routes toward liberation, toward freedom. But the abundance of options does not absolve us from the responsibility of acting. Another world is possible. Let us join together in community while we imagine the possibilities together. Our chalice lighting words are those of Imani Perry from her book, Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, found on page 21. Our congregational read this winter is her work and this book. And I quote, "I do not believe the acts of oppressors are my people's shame. For me, that my people became created and imagined from a position of unfreedom is a source of deep pride, not shame. What better evidence of human beauty and resilience could there be? May the light from our chalice remind us of the possibility of human beauty and resilience."
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the word, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend, and like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning comes of stars at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
When the first recorded plagues began sweeping through civilization, we didn't know as much about medicine or disease. But now we know that we can spread illness unknowingly. In this pandemic, we must keep our distance from everyone, including those who are healthy. We must stay at home whenever possible. On the face of it, this sounds easy. My friend Brandon, who lives in New York City, made me laugh. The first week of the stay-at-home order, he posted on social media, "I've been inside sitting on my butt playing video games all day by myself for years. It's nice to finally be recognized as the hero I am." I love his sense of humor. Of course, staying at home is not that easy. It's a major lifestyle change for most and can involve financial, social, and emotional hardship. It can feel lonely, boring, overwhelming, anxiety-producing, depressing, or stifling. Plagues have, plagued humanity since the beginning. Still, with every plague, we learn more. Even though we don't have cures for every disease, we make progress. We are sacrificing so much to make progress, and we're making these sacrifices together all around the world. This is a global, multi-faith Lent. And this Lenten season, that doesn't fit on any calendar, liturgical or otherwise, has required more than 40 days of sacrifice. This is not easy. It hasn't been easy. But acts of sacrifice are an opportunity to practice our personal and collective faith. It is an act of faith to change your way of life in the face of an invisible force that causes harm indiscriminately. It is an act of faith to give up the touch of loved ones to protect those you will never meet. To shelter in place even when your shelter doesn't feel like a refuge. To think of your relationship to others with every step you take outside your home. For those who work in healthcare, it is an act of faith to work on the front lines, even though you are face to face with that invisible force, putting your hands on it and hoping it doesn't infect you. To come home from shifts at hospitals only to remain isolated from your family within your own home for their protection. It is an act of faith to give up something you love for the love of something greater than yourself. But it is also an act of faith to give into something, to give into the faith that fellow humans will do their best today and will do better tomorrow. Faith that our strong social nature will continue to lead us to new ways of connecting. Faith that new perspectives will heighten our awareness of inequities in our medical and educational systems. Faith in science to inform us and guide us toward greater understanding. Faith that we can support each other no matter the distance between us. Faith that time away from family and friends will mean that family and friends will have more time. Faith that transcends belief, yet asks us to believe that our actions now will make a difference. Faith that what we are being called to do will save souls. May we give into that faith together.
I invite you into the spirit of prayer or meditation as is your practice. God of compassion and love, sacred spirit of justice, we have witnessed 2 weeks ago violence that unveils the ever-present foundation of white supremacy. Following the attacks on the United States Capitol, we acknowledge that as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in the society at large. We mourn the death of Brian Sicknick and all who were killed in senseless violence during this insurrection and for hundreds and hundreds of years before. As a nation, may we reject white supremacy. As a people, as a community, let us embrace compassion, truth, and the transforming power of love. Let this space we create together be large enough to hold our rage, our fear, our grief, and our love. Let it hold our ability to imagine a different world. And let these words from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail ring in our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Amen.
Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, one person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a topman, a carrot, a truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, or person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a topman, a garret, a truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you?
Our reading are the words of Gregg Levoy. Saying yes to a calling tends to place you on a path that half of you thinks doesn't make a bit of sense, but the other half knows your life won't make sense without. You find yourselves compelled to follow the sometimes blind spiritual instinct that tells you your life has purpose and meaning, and that you must act on this imperative despite the temptations to turn back down and run for cover. That will divide even the most grimly resolute against themselves. You must persist with the sort of hope and that playwright and former Czechoslovakian president Václav Havel spoke of when he said, "Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out." Closed quote. The critical challenge of discernment, knowing whether your calls are true or false, knowing how and when to respond to them, knowing whether a call really belongs to you or not, requires that you tread a path between two essential questions. One, what is right for me? And two, where am I willing to be led? Discernment also requires that you ask these two questions continually and devotedly, in hopes that by doing so, Providence will, in due course, be alerted to your desires, and the answers will find you.
Hello, Allen Avenue folks. I'm delighted to be able to share some thoughts with you here at the top of the new year, as well as in the transition zone between, let's call it the dark night and the hopefully new dawn, and of course in the continued midst of tumultuous times, but also opportune times. For instance, I have this year found myself finally entering the brave new world of online teaching and presenting, which only took me 10 years and a plague to finally come around to doing. I love teaching, but I'm a high-touch, low-tech kind of a teacher. So I've always opted for the in-person opportunities. But all of that has abruptly changed, as most of our lives have abruptly changed this past year. I'm essentially in the business of public gatherings, all right, lectures, workshops, conferences, retreats, that sort of thing. And all of those have pretty much gone the way of the dodo bird this year. And if you yourself are a teacher of any kind, a performer of any kind, work for a company whose doors have closed, you're also having to adapt, as I am. At least if we want to continue doing our work in the world and continuing to make a living, all right? And at the risk of being blunt, nature has a pretty simple word for those who are unable or unwilling to adapt to change. And the word is extinct. And I think it goes as much for the individual as it does for the species. And the pandemic is calling on us to adapt, which is really another way of saying to grow, okay? So some of you may be familiar with the name Abraham Maslow. He's the psychologist who gave us the hierarchy of needs pyramid, okay? At the bottom, food, clothing, and shelter. Above that, belonging to a tribe, etc. At the top is what he called self-actualization. Although right before he died, actually, he added a new pinnacle to that pyramid. He called it self-transcendence. But this is what he said about self-actualization. He said self-actualizing types, who are the people who tend to fulfill their potential, also tend to be the kind of people who make the growth choice over the fear choice routinely. Now, Joseph Campbell, who gave us the hero's journey, said that phase one of responding to a calling, which of course is the beginning of any hero's or heroine's journey, the phase one of responding to a calling is running from it. All right? It's resistance. It's fear. It's maybe even anger at having your boat rocked. And of course, the pandemic is specializing in rocking our boats as callings do, okay? Though it's possible that the degree of resistance you might have to whatever this pandemic year has been calling for from you might be proportionate to the amount of power that's waiting to be unleashed when the no turns into a yes, okay? But the pandemic is offering us an AP class, a graduate level class in boat rocking, okay? And in adaptation. And humans have actually proven themselves to be extremely good at adaptation, okay? But now that a vaccine has finally arrived for the coronavirus, it is based on the following wisdom, which is really the bedrock of the entire science of immunology. And that is that you introduce a little chaos into the system to strengthen it. Okay? You shake it up for the sake of helping it evolve. Okay? And I think the chaos in this pandemic year has the potential to do the same thing. And I think it's interesting that in the central creation story in the Western canon, which is Genesis, chaos with a capital C is described as the condition of the earth before it was formed. So what I take that to mean is chaos precedes creation. Chaos precedes creation. If you deny yourself the one, you're going to deny yourself the other. All right? Reminds me of something Red Fox once said. Remember Red Fox from Sanford and Son? He said, heroes are not born, they're cornered. Brilliant observation, I think. So one way to approach this whole pandemic year we've lived through, and really one of the purposes that it can serve, is in exploring how your life, how your work, how your service might grow and evolve as a result of it. Okay? What the chaos in the coronavirus may be calling for from you, whether creatively, professionally, interpersonally, spiritually. Right? It's really an opportunity to step outside and look back in through the shop window. Take an inventory of your life. How have you responded to these events? What are you learning? What are you discovering about yourself? Where are growth and creation being evoked or provoked, as the case probably is, all right? And it's useful to consider these in a personal context, not a planetary context. You know, not so much what is the pandemic calling for from us, from humanity, but what is it calling for from you personally? And to think of this not in a philosophical context, you know, what is the ultimate purpose of all this? How is this perhaps a reset for humanity? But how might it be a reset for you personally? Okay? And to pose questions to yourself along the lines of what wants to emerge or awaken for you at this juncture? All right? What is being given an unexpected entrance cue by these events? What course corrections are being called for? What silver linings are appearing? And of course, what do you want your new normal to look like once the pandemic is in the rearview mirror? Okay? So let me give you just a handful of examples of the kind of questions I've been asking of myself this past year, and which I will be asking in the webinar this afternoon. All right? Here's one. Science tells us that an asteroid ushered out the dinosaurs and gave the mammals underfoot, including our forebears, a shot at prominence. Okay? So using that as an analogy, when the dinosaurs, if you will, of the status quo are sidelined, as they have been for most of us this year, parts of us that are normally overshadowed are going to have a chance to come out into the light. All right? For example, I've got a friend who owns a retail store, and he says that because he has no more customers coming through the store anymore, though he's in the store doing the online part of his business Monday through Friday, but because he has no customers coming through anymore, he's discovered that this is a huge relief, and that he's more of an introvert than he ever knew himself to be. And in fact, that his reputation, his sense of identity as Mr. Social doesn't actually fit him anymore. And now he's taking some time to explore this more introverted side of himself. Okay, so you might ask the question, what parts of yourself have you noticed emerging out of the shadows this past year? All right, and what have you discovered or maybe rediscovered about yourself as a result of all this? All right, here's another question. Shakespeare wrote Macbeth, King Lear, and Anthony and Cleopatra during a plague. All right. Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity and invented calculus while in quarantine for the bubonic plague. And I, at the risk of putting myself in the same sentence with Sir Isaac Newton and William Shakespeare, I've discovered that the pandemic has been one of the best things to hit my writing in years, because it's given me a tremendous focus and some very juicy and compelling subjects to sink my teeth into. Okay, so this is not to diminish the very real misfortune that a lot of people have experienced as a result of this past year, but it may be that the sudden disruption in your daily rhythms, if not the isolation, may be a boon to your creativity and resourcefulness and inventiveness in ways that wouldn't have happened otherwise. All right, so you know, I'm not saying you're going to discover any fundamental laws of the universe or write the next Macbeth, but you might just finish that novel you've been daring and double daring yourself to write forever. You might start a garden. You might take up the guitar. You might finally get to some of those home improvement projects you've been backburnering in deference to the daily grind. Okay, so you might simply ask, what bursts of creativity, however modest, or inventiveness, or resourcefulness you've noticed in yourself in this past year and are hoping perhaps to take into the next phase. All right, here's a third question. Some people believe that the whole pandemic is just a biological event. All right, it's just an organism wanting to reproduce. There's no master plan. There's no grand scheme of anything at work here. There's no nature sending us to our rooms to think about what we've done, which is one of the memes, of course, that's been making the rounds throughout all this. It's just predation. It's not punishment, okay? And then there are those who genuinely believe that this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is the beginning of the great turning, the new consciousness, the long hoped for reset for humanity, okay? And to be sure, there's plenty of opportunities in all of this for the spiritual optimists, all right? Plenty of lessons to be had in unity and interconnectedness and compassion and service and God knows non-attachment. Okay, so to whatever degree you resonate to the second line of thinking, that there is a greater purpose in all this, maybe even a lesson, the question is, what might that lesson be for you? Again, not for humanity, but if this series of events that are still unfolding and will be for the foreseeable future have come to teach you a lesson, what do you imagine that lesson would be? Okay, so an interviewer once reportedly asked Albert Einstein, of all the questions you've posed into the mysteries of the universe, what do you think is the most important question to ask? And Albert Einstein reportedly said, is the universe a friendly place or not? So how you answer that question is going to determine, I think, how your life unfolds. How you interpret and respond to the things that happen to you, including events like the pandemic. Okay? So you've heard the expression, trust the universe. Okay? Trust the universe. I've been thinking about that expression a lot lately, as I frankly often do during very challenging times in my own life. I've been trying to deconstruct it a bit more this time. What exactly does that mean, to trust the universe? What does that mean? What parts of the universe are you trusting when you say you trust the universe? And is this a skill you can build? Okay. Now, this goes by a lot of different names. Frankly, I think it has a noble lineage. Let go and let God is an example of trust the universe. Let go and let God. Trust the process. Have faith. Don't push the river. Thy will be done. Okay? But here's the thing. The definition of trusting something means believing in its reliability. So right off the bat, there's a catch here. All right? Because the universe is clearly reliable. I mean, the sun comes up, the sun goes down, gravity works, etc. But the universe is also reliably unpredictable. I'm thinking of chaos theory, okay? Or Murphy's Law, or the law of entropy, or, if you don't mind me saying, the shit that happens, the famous, right? So saying you trust the universe has to include trusting that it is reliably chaotic and random, all right? Which are forces that operate on affairs down here on the home planet and certainly in our own lives, okay? So trusting the universe means trusting it to be itself, which is a combination of reliable and unreliable, okay? And trusting that we ourselves are going to pretty much operate in the same fashion throughout the course of life, okay? Now, this requires a skill that I once heard somebody describe as heroism redefined for the modern age, which is the ability to tolerate paradox, okay? To hold two seemingly contrary ideas or impulses or even beliefs inside you at the same time and still retain the ability to function. You know, if not hang on to your cookies, all right? So faith and fear, okay? My will and thy will, us and them, reliable and unreliable, okay? And paradox, I think, requires that you bring these two seeming opposites together to talk to one another, all right? Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings, once said, it doesn't do you any good to leave a dragon out of your calculations if you live near him, okay? So, trusting the universe and finding meaning and purpose in this particular manifestation of it, meaning, in this case, the pandemic, might ultimately come down to being in conversation with the universe, in co-respondence with it, okay? And there's lots of ways of doing that. Dialoguing with the dragons in your life, asking for dream guidance, honoring intuition and synchronicity, listening to your body, spending time out in the natural world, meditation, journaling is a beautiful way of being in conversation with the universe. I'm thinking of something Ira Progoff once said. Progoff is like one of the grandfathers of personal journaling. He devised something back in the 60s called the intensive journaling process. And he said that the purpose of journaling is to go down deeply enough into your own well that you eventually hit the stream that's the source of all the wells, all right? Which is a perfect tool for being in conversation with the universe and also for feeling our way through events like the pandemic, okay? One of my own responses to the pandemic and to the financial anxiety that it's brought on is to rearrange my morning schedule so that I'm now including an act of trust into my morning rather than an abstract notion of it. So what I'm doing now is I'm playing the piano for 15 or 20 minutes in the morning before coming in here into the office to start working. And I'm doing that in part to demonstrate to myself that I can afford the time to do that, okay? An act of trust. In fact, one of the diagnostics I use anymore to tell me whether I'm in fact trusting the universe or not is when I make counterintuitive decisions like that, all right? When I respond to fear with, say, surrender rather than striving, or I choose passion over security sometimes. Make the growth choice over the fear choice. All right. Or when I try to allow things to happen rather than always trying to make them happen. Make money, make ends meet, make a living, make headway, make a difference. You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, it may be that trusting the universe is less a practical issue or even a psychological issue as it is a spiritual one. It's not necessarily about strategizing or creating new affirmations or behavior mod of some sort, all of which are great ideas. But it may be about sitting respectfully with things as they are. A high art. Sitting respectfully with things as they are. Feeling what you feel without even needing to understand it. No less do something about it. And having a certain forbearance, I think, for mystery. Okay? Not just out in the universe, but in here as well. Okay? So in closing, I would humbly encourage each one of us to answer Einstein's question. Answer Einstein's question. Is the universe a friendly place or not? And maybe ask yourself why you think the universe is either a friendly place or not. Okay? And finally, I will mention that the webinar this afternoon from 1 to 4 is a very hands-on opportunity to explore what this tumultuous year, this pandemic year, is calling for from you personally. So I hope you'll come. And thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts with you this morning. And I'm going to sign off now, and I wish each and all of you blessings.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head,
On this Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, let the space we create together continue to inspire us toward justice. And again, I quote Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." May we go forth into the world and do the good work of our faith.